Have you ever planned something and you really, really, really wanted it to go exactly as you planned it to go? I have too. But it doesn't always work out. You see, we want things to happen according to our own plans, according to our own desires, and that's why sometimes they don't go our way. Because sometimes there's God's path, and then there's a path we're trying to pave for ourselves, which goes in a completely different direction from the path that God has already made for us. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video today. That even when you can't see God's path, it's there. Even if you don't want to follow God's path, you must. If you look at God's path and you see it as a chore, that's not the way to look at it. Because ultimately, God's path will not only lead you to greatness, but it will lead you to happiness. And I don't mean you're going to get rich. I don't mean you're going to get a bunch of friends or your family's going to accept you if they don't. What I mean is you're going to realize how close you can get with God and how much you can rely upon God while going down His path, which will make peace come within you, and you'll know that you're justified no matter what you do. That doesn't mean you should abuse His grace, of course, but you're justified through the sacrifice that has been set out on the cross, and that brings you a lot of peace and joy. And I'm speaking from experience. When I used to follow my own path rather than God's path, it would lead to destruction. I would get depressed, I would hurt people, I would hurt myself, I would rely on things that I shouldn't be relying on for sources of happiness and peace that would go away because they were temporary, while Jesus filled my heart, and it has been full ever since. The first verse I want to bring up is Romans chapter 8, verse 28, which says the following: "And we know that God causes all things to work together for good, to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose." So, as Christians who love God, He has a path for us set out. He has a purpose for us. And ultimately that path, if we follow it, will lead to us fulfilling that purpose. And I don't mean that it will bring you down a path to perfection. You will never be perfect, because the only perfect man to ever walk this earth was Jesus. But we can try to get better every single day by walking down His path. Because if you're better than you were yesterday, then you're all ultimately going down the correct path. But sometimes during life, we try to forge our own destinies, and we try to manifest our own paths that we can follow because we want specific things, whether it be fame, whether it be money, whether it be love, whether it be peace. But if we gain these things without God, going down our own path, they'll either fade away or they won't fulfill us. How many times have you seen throughout history people get rich and successful, but they still take their lives? They're still depressed. They're still the sinful selves that they were before. It's because it doesn't fulfill them. We as humans, we gain something and we get bored of it real quick. We want the next thing. We want the next feeling of dopamine, of serotonin. We want that. We want more and more and more and more and more. We take all we can get. We'll never be satisfied on our own. That's why we need God. Because God doesn't only satisfy us, He overfills us with so much joy, so much happiness. This only happens if we go down God's path. If we try to gain things we want without using God's path, without going down God's path, it just crumbles, like I said earlier. It'll just fall beneath you and you'll fall with it. But if you're walking down God's path, Jesus is walking right next to you, and every time you fall, He'll pick you right back up. Sometimes you'll fall to test your faith. sometimes you go through things you don't really want to go through, which suck, but ultimately it brings you closer to God. If you fall on his path, he picks you right back up. But if you fall on your own path, you can't save yourself. So the only thing you can do is on your way down, when you're falling off your path, you have to try and cling on to God's path. And if you leave God's path to take your own, you can always turn around and go right back down God's path. And there's going to be times in your life where you feel like you don't want to follow God's path because it means you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. Whether it's sacrifice friendships, or leaving behind drugs, or leaving behind other forms of addictions. You'll have to do these things. Because if you're chasing intimacy with Christ, if you're chasing Christ down his path, and you want to follow his path, but you have drugs blocking the way, you have lust blocking the way, you have anxiety blocking the way, doubts, it's just going to block you every time you're trying to go down God's path. Imagine God's path as a very thin rope that you have to walk along, and your sinful desires are weights that are added on top of you when you're walking along this very thin rope. You're going to fall. You are going to fall, and you're going to fall off of God's path because of all these desires that you have that are holding you back from fully accepting his mercy, his grace, his love, and his peace. You must let these things go. You must let go of things that are harming your relationship with God or preventing your current relationship from deepening. This also means you must trust God and the path he has set out for you. Because when you don't see his path, you still have to trust that it is there, that he is still leading you down the correct direction. Isaiah chapter 26 verse 4 says, "Trust in the Lord forever, for in God the Lord we have an everlasting rock." So if you're ever fearing that God is going to leave you behind, or the path that you're following is not a steady one, you're following God, an everlasting, sturdy rock. God does not change. That means his love and his path for you does not change. So you can always follow it, and it's always there, even when you don't see it. But you must trust him. You must.